what I'm particularly interested in is the sort of corporate characteristics that Uber currently demonstrates. It's certainly the case that in the past, I know that your characteristic has been, well, you've been insurgent, and therefore you've been reasonably scrappy, you might say aggressive. But of course, you're not the underdogs anymore in this field, and I wondered whether you had any regrets over the sort of tone of your arrival into the market, or whether you're just tempering it now that you're a slightly different business to when you first started out taking on all those enemies as you framed them.
Well, I get this question a little bit. I have no idea where that might have come from. We obviously have a few fights. We obviously have a few fights that we have to go out there and fight for what we believe in some cases. But I think the difference is that when you're this small underdog, I think you can be a little more brash than I think when you're the big guy.
And of course, you think that some people would be intimidated by the pace and the scale of the change that you're representing?
That's possible. I think, getting at the question though is that I think, my previous company I did for 6.5 years, 4 years of which I didn't make a salary. So I'm really used to being the little guy. And so it's taken, in this company, we're only 4 years old right now. So I'm still getting used to being perceived as the bigger one. And so we just have to be a little more diplomatic and a little more statesmanlike, and I'm working on it.
Sure. And of course, you refer to the scale of the operation now. I mean, how do you keep a handle on a company that is growing at this rate? That you can go into the office on a Monday, and by the end of the week, you're in new cities, you've got more staff, you've got more drivers on the books. How do you keep in control?
Yeah, I think everybody's management style is different. The way I run my company is really today is very similar to how I did it when we were just 5 people. And basically in the morning I wake up and I have 2 lists. One list is the super interesting, really difficult problems that need to be solved. And I approach them, I'm a computer engineer by training, I approach them as an engineer. It's a fun puzzle to get into and figure out. And it often requires invention of some kind, but creative problem solving. The other list is all the cool things that we want to invent. And so every day, those are the 2 things I do. I solve problems and invent stuff. And whether we're 1,600 people or so now, or 5 people, for me it feels very similar. It doesn't feel, in a weird kind of way, it actually doesn't feel that much different for me.
And finally, I'm very interested to see the way in which you start to talk about your operations in political terminology. And I know that you've taken on board some political strategists, and you talk about yourself as being a challenger candidate, you talk about the taxi industry as being the incumbent. Why did you start to think of it in those terms, and do you think that's a lesson that more businesses and more challengers can start to think?
Well, it's like, I told you, my background is a bit of a computer engineer, so a bit of a technologist or techie. And our go-to is not to think in politics. So it took a while for us to realize that we were in a political campaign and the candidate was Uber. But that's really what it is that there's influence on politicians, city officials, and other folks that influence them. And so we've sort of learned over time that we have to engage in some way, so that our side of the story I just told, that brings so much good, I think, to a city, makes it work more efficiently and makes quality of life in the city so much better. We have to get that story out there, and I think a political campaign in many ways for us is getting better at communicating those benefits and the upside for the people in cities.
Well, very best of luck with your quest to rid certainly London's streets of cars. Ladies and gentlemen, Travis Kalanick.